The border between Finland and the Soviet Union in late 1939 was not merely a geographical line. It was the collision point between two irreconcilable realities. On one side, Joseph Stalin's gigantic industrial and military machine, fueled by millions of conscripts and an expansionist ideology. On the other, a small agrarian, newly independent nation that relied on little more than intimate knowledge of its own terrain. It was in this scenario of absolute imbalance that the most lethal military figure in modern history emerged. Simo Häyhä was not born a soldier. He was forged by the land he would come to defend. Born in the small town of Rautjärvi, near the Russian border, his life before the conflict was the definition of Spartan simplicity. He was a farmer and a hunter, accustomed to spending days in the dense forests of Karelia, tracking moose and foxes in temperatures that defied human physiology. This routine was not just a livelihood, it was involuntary elite training. The patience required to hunt a wild animal, which possesses senses far sharper than a human's, is the same patience required of a sniper. Häyhä learned to read the forest. He knew how sound traveled in the freezing air, how snow betrayed movement, and how the human silhouette stood out against the white horizon. At 17, he joined the Finnish civil guard, the suojeluskunta. Unlike a regular army focused on mass maneuvers, the civil guard valued individual skill. It was there that Häyhä's natural talent met technique. He participated obsessively in shooting competitions, amassing trophies and developing muscle memory that turned the rifle into an extension of his body. At home, he practiced estimating distances with just his eyes, a critical skill in an era where laser rangefinders were science fiction. When the Soviet Union invaded Finland on November 30th, 1939, beginning the Winter War, the disparity was laughable. The Soviets possessed total air superiority, thousands of tanks, and an overwhelming infantry numerical advantage. They expected a quick victory, perhaps in 2 weeks. What they found, however, was a Finnish army operating under a doctrine of flexibility and ambush. Häyhä was assigned to the Kolar front, a region of dense forests and rugged terrain. He did not go to war for glory or ideological hatred. He went, like many of his countrymen, because the war came to his farm. The common man was about to dismantle the machine. What made Simo Häyhä statistically anomalous was not just his accuracy, but his methodology. Most snipers of the era, and even today, rely on advanced optics to identify and neutralize targets at long ranges. Häyhä rejected this convention. He operated exclusively with a Mosin-Nagant M28-30 rifle, a Finnish variant of the classic Russian rifle, equipped only with open iron sights. This tactical decision, which might seem like a technological regression, was actually a brilliant adaptation to the specific environment of the Winter War. The use of scopes presented 3 fatal risks in that scenario. First, the sun's reflection on glass lenses was the quickest way to reveal a shooter's position to enemy observers. Second, in extreme cold reaching -40 degrees, lenses frequently fogged up with breath or condensation, rendering the weapon useless at the critical moment. The third factor was biomechanical. To use a scope, the shooter must raise their head a few centimeters higher than when using iron sights. In a battlefield where life is measured in millimeters, those centimeters expose the shooter's silhouette, making him a target. With iron sights, Häyhä kept his profile as low as possible, practically invisible in the snow. His preparation of the firing position, or nest, was an exercise in obsessive perfectionism. Before positioning himself, he would pack the snow in front of him tightly, pouring water over it so it would freeze into a solid block. This prevented the muzzle blast from kicking up a cloud of fresh snow, which would give away his location after the first shot. To combat the vapor of his own breath in the freezing air, Häyhä kept snow in his mouth while he waited. This cooled the exhaled air, eliminating the white cloud that escapes the mouth in winter. He also utilized layers of white camouflage clothing, blending perfectly into the landscape. While Soviet soldiers, in the early months of the war, advanced in dark khaki uniforms that stood out as crisp targets against the white background, Häyhä was a ghost. Beyond the rifle, it is crucial to note that Häyhä's kill count did not come solely from long-range shots. He was a master of close-range ambush warfare. When Soviet patrols attempted to flank Finnish positions, he utilized the Suomi KP-31 submachine gun. This weapon, with its high rate of fire, allowed him to neutralize entire groups of enemies in seconds. The combination of the rifle's surgical precision and the submachine gun's devastating firepower made him a complete combat unit. He didn't need a spotter or a support team. He operated alone, in silence, turning the forest into a kill zone where Soviet numerical superiority became irrelevant. The legend of Simo Häyhä was cemented on the banks of the Kolar River. The Finnish command's order for that sector was simple and terrifying. Kolar must hold. The local geography favored defense, but the force ratio was desperate. At certain times, 32 Finns faced over 4,000 Soviet soldiers. It was during the 100 days of war that Häyhä achieved his record. In a single day, he was credited with 25 confirmed kills. But it is not just the numbers that define his definitive moment, but the psychological duel he imposed on the Red Army. The Soviets knew he was there. The morale of the invading troops plummeted daily. Officers were taken down while giving orders, sentries fell in silence, and cooks were hit while serving meals. The fear of the invisible paralyzed operations. The Soviet command, frustrated with the stagnant advance and inexplicable casualties, decided that eliminating that single shooter was a strategic priority. First, they sent counter-snipers. Experienced Soviet marksmen were dispatched to hunt the White Death. In one documented episode, a Soviet sniper managed to kill 3 Finnish soldiers and an officer in a single day. Häyhä accepted the challenge. He positioned himself before dawn and waited. Patience was his primary weapon. The entire day passed without a single movement. As the sun began to set, the Soviet sniper, believing the area was safe, rose slightly. The setting sun hit the lens of his telescopic scope. That fleeting glint was the only mistake needed. Häyhä fired once, from 450 meters away, eliminating the threat. When the counter-snipers failed, the Soviets turned to brute force. They began to saturate entire areas of the forest with heavy artillery fire, hoping to kill Häyhä by sheer statistical probability. On one occasion, an artillery shell exploded near his position, tearing his coat but leaving him unharmed. He shook off the dust and changed positions. The Battle of Kolar became a meat grinder, but the Finnish line did not break. Häyhä's presence acted as a force multiplier. Knowing that the White Death was watching the lines gave courage to the Finns and instilled terror in the Soviets. He proved that knowledge of the terrain and individual discipline could, in fact, hold back a superior mechanized force. Simo Häyhä's war ended abruptly on March 6, 1940, just 1 week before the conflict ended. During intense combat against Soviet infantry that had broken through the lines, he was hit in the face by an explosive bullet. The projectile entered his left jaw and deflected, destroying part of his face and leaving him in a coma. The soldiers who rescued him said that half his head was missing. He was presumed dead and placed on a pile of bodies until someone noticed a subtle movement in his leg. The physical endurance he had built over years of outdoor life was what saved him. He woke from the coma on March 13th, the very day peace was declared between Finland and the Soviet Union. Häyhä survived the war, but the war left permanent marks. He underwent 26 complex surgeries to reconstruct his jaw using bone taken from his hip. The facial deformity would accompany him for the rest of his life, a physical reminder of the price of Finnish freedom. His active military career ended there, but his impact on military doctrine was lasting. The Finnish army promoted him from corporal directly to second lieutenant, an unprecedented rise in the country's history. He was decorated with the Cross of Liberty and the Cross of the Battle of Kolar. However, Simo Häyhä's true legacy lies not in medals, but in the simplicity of his post-war existence. He returned to his life as a hunter and dog breeder. He lived a long and quiet life, passing away only in 2002, at 96 years of age. When journalists asked him, decades later, what the secret to his skill was and if he felt remorse, his answer summarized the mindset of the professional soldier devoid of hatred. "I only did what I was told to do, as well as I could." And regarding how he became such a good shooter, he replied with a single word: practice. Simo Häyhä remains the most efficient sniper in history, with 505 confirmed rifle kills, plus over 200 with a submachine gun. But beyond the numbers, he represents the definitive archetype of asymmetric defense. He proved that technology and firepower can be defeated by cunning, adaptation to the environment, and the unwavering will of a man protecting his home. In the frozen vastness of military history, the White Death remains undefeated,